Yes, right behind that curtain.
Curtain number one.
Just leave the $3 in the bucket.
I think I dropped my pen. I'm very needy.
I have it's very.
We've got extra pens too. Thomas, are you seeing the agenda and everything?
I am, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, so far it's just like us, no other people.
This is open discussion. but
Well, I know, but now we're gonna.
I don't wanna show up.
Not yet.
Hey, they probably still hold the meetings on Thursday, even though I notice it's not.
You don't hold it on Thursday.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. This will call to order the December 16th Town of Hideout Planning Commission meeting. First order of business, roll call. Donna,
Yes,
Joel,
Yes.
Rachel,
I'm here.
Glynis,
Yes,
Chase,
you're on mute.
Chase, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay, and Peter is absent. Next item, approval of the meeting minutes of the November 21st, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Does anybody have any comments or issues with the meeting minutes?
No, I didn't have any edits.
Is that a first?
Probably.
Would someone
Way
like
to
to make a
go.
motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve our meeting minutes from November 21st, 24, the planning commission regular meeting.
I second.
Okay, then we'll take a vote. Donna,
Yes,
Joel,
Yes.
Rachel,
yes,
Glynis,
Yes,
and Tony's a yes, therefore the meeting minutes are accepted. Next item on the agenda, consideration of establishing the 2025 Planning Commission regular meeting schedule. I believe we have it up there, which continues to be the third Thursday of every month. The only issue might be June 19th, if the office is closed. We will have to move that meeting.
We're still waiting for final
Well,
decision.
we're waiting a final decision if the town offices will be closed.
She will get
Yeah,
back
so
to
you can just leave it, and if you need to change it, you
Well,
can.
like we
when it's
normally do.
closer. Yeah, I mean, it's
Put Alicia to work to send out whatever surveys.
Yes.
Does anybody have any issue with that? Or would like to make a motion to accept that schedule?
I move that we accept the 2025 annual meeting schedule as listed.
I'll second.
Thank you. Then we'll take a vote. Donna,
yes,
Joel,
Yes.
Rachel,
yes,
Glynis,
Yes,
and Tony's a yes. Therefore, the schedule will be accepted. Next, public hearing. Consideration and possible recommendation to the Hideout Town Council of a resolution adopting the Hideout Town Engineering Standard specifications and drawing manual and an ordinance amending Title 10 related to engineering, development, and design standards. Okay, Thomas, I don't know if you want to go through this or if Gordon wants to just take the ball and run with this.
I could take a couple of minutes and maybe just introduce this to you and then really, yeah, let Gordon run this since he is the author of the document.
and can I go kind of high level, just mention something high level, is that just from a process, you have two things going on. One is adopting a resolution that's gonna adopt these standards.
Yes.
And the other is to adopt an ordinance, which is gonna pull them all out of
Where
the,
they are now.
where they are now in the code. So just so you kind of understand that.
Okay. Thank you.
so two different.
We'll be
motions.
making voting on two different motions.
Okay,
All right, Thomas, please go ahead. Thank you.
So I think Polly kind of outlined what the two requests are tonight. Again, it is pulling them out of the code and then a resolution. So an ordinance to pull them out of the code because they don't need to live there any longer. And then a resolution to put them into a manual that is much easier to use for developers, engineers down the line rather than having them try to access our code. So I'll let Gordon address any specific questions you may have, or if he wanted to walk through any specific standards that he wanted to make you all aware of. But I thought what might be worthy of you all looking at initially tonight is the slight changes to the road widths, the right-of-way widths, and configuration for right-of-way. In fact, you could go down to the next page, if Alicia, if that's you driving, maybe right there where those two images are. You can kind of see that the recommendation is to increase the road widths a little bit. So this is showing, the top one is illustrating a typical road section from shoreline development. And you can see there that right now what we typically have is 24 feet of asphalt. And then we've got the 2.5 feet of curb and gutter, kind of a rolled curb and gutter. That has been the typical layout for most of Hideout, especially since 2020, when the new ordinance was implemented. The recommendation is to go to, you could scroll up just a little bit, Alicia, to get that bottom one in. The local access road would include 30 feet of asphalt plus the curb and gutter, which again is probably 2.5, 3 feet. So it would be about 36 feet of pavement, where now we have approximately 29 feet of pavement. So it would widen it a little bit, which could allow parking on, I guess that actually could be both sides, but I'll let Gordon address that. So that's number one, is really looking at the widths. Are you comfortable with wider roads? There is some logic to that. The second component is uh, the curb treatment. The existing curb has always been kind of that rolled curb and gutter that you see throughout town that you can mount with your car. You can drive over at any point where a driveway is located, of course. The proposal is for consideration of a high back curb, which is essentially a 6-inch curb that is more of kind of an urban curb that cannot be mounted. So the question is, are you comfortable with that? I could let Gordon walk through maybe the details of that if you want, but those are really, I think, two areas that you all should look at. And after we address road widths, can you scroll down just a little bit, Alicia, since we're discussing this? I've got a little bit of a comparative chart here. The current standards for local roads versus minor collector, major collector. What you see on the left is what we have as the existing right-of-way widths. What you see on the right would be the proposed. So again, the discussion on that first one that I showed you is really for the local roads, which is what we see most prevalent throughout the community. The question is width, parking, and curbs. Any questions, thoughts, or input, or additional information from me before we jump into the details?
No, I mean, I have some questions, but I'll reserve them for Gordon.
Okay.
Is
Would
there?
you like me to take it over, Thomas, at this point?
Yeah, go ahead and take it over, Gordon.
Sure, just one quick question. Is there in the town code some kind of comment that says that these are pulled out and this is where they exist now?
We will put that language in there referencing this manual.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. That was the first point I was going to make, is this will still be code. It's just code by reference. So all of this won't be buried in words and so forth in the code. Instead, it's in its own little self-contained manual, but it's codified by reference.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. So Thomas talked about the local street really where this is coming from, the width of the proposed local street is based on the fire code. And it's based on being able to park on both sides. The fire code requires 32 feet of traversable pavement in order to have parking on both sides. And the one that's proposed, I think it's probably a foot wider than that. Can you scroll back to that, Thomas?
Right up there, Alicia. Yeah, it's the top one right there, those two.
Oh, okay. Are you able to zoom in on that local access road? Anyway, all right, good job. So I can see it. I don't know if everybody else can, but so that shows 2430. So it shows 30 feet of pavement and then 1.5 feet of those are 2-foot curbs, and the pan is considered by the fire code to be traversable. So you got 1.5 feet of pan on both sides, so that gives you 33 feet. So that's based on the fire code, and the rationale there is parking in the 6 months that I've been working with Hideout. It's obvious that parking causes problems quite a bit in Hideout, and so the proposal here is to offer a wide enough street that people can park on both sides that the fire department won't have a problem with. That's really where that's coming from. If you have narrow,
A question. We
Sure.
already, it states in the town that you can't park for X amount of months on the street at all for 4 months, 5 months of the year. Why would we want to widen the streets so that we have illegal parking on both sides of the street for those 5 months? Because it doesn't get enforced as it is now. Why would we want to double the problem, so to speak?
well, I don't view it as doubling the problem. I view it as providing space in the absence of the regulation, in the absence of the enforcement. And so, enforcement's a problem. So I just view it inversely.
And you don't think if you let people park on both sides of the road, that they're gonna do it illegally and it won't be enforced, and it doesn't do anything to increase the access up and down the road, as far as I'm concerned.
So are you talking about during the winter time?
Yes,
Well, so a blanket enforcement during the winter time is very different. And so I'm sorry, I'm not following the logic of providing more space causes more problems. It doesn't track for me.
How many roads are yet to be built that this would apply to? Like, aren't
Well,
most
we've got a whole new annexation. I guess Thomas can speak to. I haven't studied the town's planning, and I don't know how much area is yet to be developed. Thomas can speak to that.
We do have all of the annexation area, the Richardson Flat area, and then we would certainly have Elkhorn Springs up where on the Salzman property. And then we would have potentially outstanding phases of Deer Springs at the north end of town. And then if there were any additional developments proposed, whether in the master MDA or outside, this could potentially apply to them, but any future annexation, certainly it's going to apply to.
It
So
applied to-
another driver behind this is wherever you have parking that's allowed on one side of the street, then you must designate which side of the street that's on. So, for example, we've got a development under review right now, Shoreline Phase 4. It's just still under review. And pursuant to the MDA, they can, well, pursuant to our existing standards too. I mean, they can have these narrower streets. And one of the comments on the plat that I made on the plat was, okay, if you want a narrow street like this, you're going to have to designate on the plat which side is going to be, which side will allow parking and which side won't. So that people, as they do their due diligence and they buy property on one side of the street or the other, they will know whether parking is allowed on that street or not. And I guarantee you, after that's established, then there will be friction between the haves and the have-nots relative to parking. So for the sake of a few feet, this street width eliminates that contention. And again, with regard to regulation of snow plowing, that's a common regulation. People need to plan on having problems if they're, they need to plan on being cited if they're parking when it's snowing. Okay, go ahead.
Can we say that, that these wider roads will be, for the areas in the annexation where it's a little more urban? And
We don't know if it's gonna be urban.
Well, so I would offer a suggestion of perspective. This is a narrow street. 32 feet or 33 feet of traversable pavement is a narrow street. It's the narrowest street that's allowed by the fire code to be parked on both sides. That's not wide, that's narrow, and that's irrespective of urban or rural environment. What the town has gotten used to is problematically narrow, candidly speaking.
Thomas, question for you. The roads that go through Shoreline, are they wider than through the rest of the town?
No, some of them
The
are a
main
little
road that takes us out to Ross Creek, that whole road. Shoreline Drive, is it?
Oh, Shoreline Drive is wider than your typical road in, say, Shoreline Development.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shoreline Development has some narrower roads that were put in as part of Shoreline 1. But when we did Shoreline 2 and 3, I think they adhered to the dimensional standards that you see on the left-hand side. So they got a little wider to meet the town code. But yes, Shoreline Drive is wider. I forget how wide Shoreline Drive is, but it is wider than the section you see on the left-hand side, existing standards. It's probably, if you were to scroll up a little bit, Alicia, you would see the one in the middle. I bet it's more of in the minor scroll the other way. Yeah, sorry.
That way?
Go the other way.
That way, sorry.
And Gordon, you don't think a
I'll be in the
wide road would give people a tendency to drive faster despite the issue? Because we already have an issue with people driving too fast through this town.
Well, there's no doubt the narrower the street, or I should say the wider the street, the faster people go. But this has got to be weighed with the reality of what's happening today in Hideout. Today in Hideout, you have streets that are of widths that only allow parking on one side. But the reality is you have people and contractors regularly parking on both sides of the street. And that is a safety issue. If
And that's
you
the town's fault for not enforcing the parking code. And widening the streets is not gonna change that issue.
Okay, you just made two arguments. Let's address, what was the first one?
I said, that's the town's fault for not addressing that issue and citing them.
So the presumption is that the town will provide resources to police that. And that's not, that has been that's not happening. And so what was your second argument?
You forgot.
I mean, well, no, my other argument is that widening the roads is not gonna alleviate that issue of them parking on both sides of the road and creating a traffic issue or a safety issue.
Yes, it will. It creates enough space for emergency vehicles to get between them when parking is occurring on both sides of the road. That's exactly the point I'm making. Yes, it will.
If the town enforced the ordinance as it stands now, safety vehicles and emergency vehicles would have no issues getting through, correct?
Yes. So I guess that's a policy decision if the town is going to commit more resources to actually make that happen.
I just want to say that I agree with Tony that I think that a wider road is going to push people to drive faster. And also, are we really trying to build to accommodate the construction crews as opposed to the town residents?
It wasn't a question of accommodating the construction crews. It was a question of safety. So again, you're making an argument that that is based on the town doing a better job of enforcement. And if that's a policy decision that the council wants to make, then they can make that decision.
I have another question. Do we have guidelines as far as guest parking for every development?
Well, so that's a planning question about adequacy of parking. That question applies to planned developments, commercial or residential. It wouldn't apply to single family residential. Unless, I guess there's Thomas, you can speak to this too, about driveway depths and widths. In some cities require certain widths of driveways and certain depths of driveways to accommodate more on-site parking.
And most of that is dictated by a minimum standard of 2 parking spaces per unit, and that's what's required. The HOAs have historically provided some off-street parking, those parking pads that you see for visitor parking, and that's governed by each HOA.
So you're saying the problem is really more for single family homes?
Say that one more time.
Are you saying that the parking issue is more the single family homes?
I don't know if it's a single family home issue or not. You mean those who are using, is the issue single family homes that are using the visitor parking spaces?
No, I mean that they need more space on the street.
I don't know that that's the case. Have you noticed that in, say, in your neighborhood, that the homes or the twins even need additional parking space?
No, I mean, GCD initially had planned parking for us, and then they told us that they forgot to put in the spaces, and then we got them to go back and redo it. And I think we generally have enough parking.
Yeah, I think so. I generally think so too, up in the shoreline area, phase 1 and 2, I generally. So,
think the biggest issue is the contractors. If we didn't have contractors, I don't think we would have the problem.
Oh, and I have to say, driving on Shoreline Drive and coming from Ross Creek up Shoreline Drive, when you come around some of those curves, you have people coming downhill and I'm going around a car. And then you have a car coming downhill and then I'm swerving back into my lane that I, just came from because I was going around a car. So I think that having a wider road is safer. I think it also looks better. If you look around at some high-end neighborhoods, I think they have wider roads than we do. And also safer as far as, emergency vehicles, that, as Gordon said. I don't, as well, I like to have the curb be the curb that consistent that we have.
We haven't gotten to discuss that
I know.
issue.
Well, that's, so if we could have it wider with that curb, I think that would be favorable in my eyes.
But so you think,
Yes,
Donna, that if you allow parking on both sides of the street and there's construction on both sides of the street, you're still gonna be able to get two cars going down that road either way,
well,
one in
can
either
you,
direction?
well, it's the same issue either way, but the
Right.
thing is that the wider road gives you more room to maneuver also. But can we do?
So the idea with the wider road also, if you have parking on both sides, then you have a narrow corridor still, which discourages speeding. And with regard to enforcement, there's, to my knowledge, there's no speeding enforcement in the town either.
Well, Gordon, it would discourage speeding only while the construction's going on. Once that's over and done with, you're left with the wider road that people are just gonna drive faster on.
Well, I don't believe so.
I'll tell you what, I like to see what your reasoning is for that, because I'll take my 28 years of law enforcement experience and put that against what you come up with in that regard.
Okay, well, I appreciate your experience. I didn't come to this meeting to compare resumes. So what I'm referring to is in residential development, or any of this development where you have people along the side, parking occurs on the road. And so this is a policy decision. It's based on the fire code. And so I'm here to get recommendations from the planning commission, and we'll forward those to the city council and have that discussion with them at a policy level. Are there other questions? Questions about the curb. The reason the curb is there is it's got greater capacity to convey stormwater, and it has some capacity to channel the vehicles. It also helps the snowplow drivers kind of keep them between the curbs. Are there questions about the curbs?
Well, in regard to the snowplow, if the issue arises where they need to push the snow up onto the lawn or whatever, it prevents them from doing that to clear the road for whatever reason. Personally, I don't think we should have, I think the curbs should be uniform throughout the town. The raised curb to me looks much too urban, and this is basically a mountain setting.
So with regard to the snow plow, that's not true. Snow in other cities where you have that park strip, that park strip is there for snow storage. So that's just simply not true. Again, that will be a policy decision as well. Are there other questions?
So the roads that we have now, Thomas, how wide is the asphalt now? Like, how could they have been built if they're not built to fire code?
So I'll answer. That's really an engineering question. They are built to the fire code, but they're built to the fire code based on parking on one side of the street.
Oh,
And
okay.
and I remind you of the other situation that I'm talking about, and that is about how neighbors get along with the built environment with the street. If you have parking on one side of the street, if you have people who live on both sides of that street, you have an automatic point of contention between those who have parking and those who do not have parking in front of their home. And for the sake of well, there have been a few cross sections floated around, and with the MDA, it makes it more confusing. So what is the minimum street width of the existing in the existing standard, Thomas, that without regard to the MDA?
So right now it is, it's the 20, if you can scroll up just a little bit, Alicia, it would be the one you see on the other way, sorry. The top left one there, it's typically the 29 feet of asphalt and pan. I think that's where we are right now. Now, I will say that prior to 2020, many of the roads were built a little bit more narrow. This 29 feet, you're probably really only seeing it, I think, in Shoreline 2 and 3, and probably Deer Springs, honestly. Some of the other roads are 26, 27 feet wide. Now you're seeing the 29 feet of pavement.
Okay, so the difference between the existing standard and the proposed is 4 feet. Proposed is 33 feet of traversable pavement. The existing is 29 feet of traversable pavement because those existing curbs are fully traversable longitudinally. I would argue that they're not comfortable to traverse perpendicularly either. And we've glossed over the stormwater capacity issue with those. But so we're talking about, for the sake of 4 feet, we're eliminating the potential disputations among neighbors about parking on one side of the street or the other. We're providing more parking capacity such that we eliminate the burden for law enforcement, and it becomes kind of a default situation that still allows commercial emergency vehicles to pass through without having to depend on law enforcement. Are there other questions?
Gordon, so the proposal is it's 30 feet of asphalt, and then on either side, it's 2 feet of pan or curb and gutter, if that's easier to understand.
It's 2 feet of curb and gutter, 18 inches of which is traversable.
Got it. Okay.
So that takes you to 33 feet of traversable pavement as opposed to 29 in the old standard.
Gordon, if
I guess if I can jump in, sorry, but so what is the 54 feet? I guess
that's just the public right of way width, that's the area that would be dedicated to the town of Hideout for sidewalks, utilities, et cetera, that the placement of those on the side treatments you see there.
okay.
I think I'm with Donna. I don't mind the wider roads, but I like the current curb configuration.
Oh, here's another issue that I have is, does this now let's say this somehow, some way gets adopted. Does this pose an issue for the developments that are currently under consideration? Because now they have to go back and redesign. It could affect the setbacks. And it could affect the standoffs.
No, anybody who's filed a preliminary application before this was presented to the council initially, they're vested in the old standards.
Got it, Gordon.
So that would be
So it's,
Elkhorn Springs.
no, Elkhorn Springs isn't, there's still concept plan. So,
Phase 4,
phase 4,
shoreline,
The shoreline,
they're under the MDA, so this wouldn't apply to them.
Now, if they open the NDA to amend something in that, then would they be whole?
No, they're not, they're never gonna open the MDA, and no, I doubt that that would change anything. It'd be nice if it, anyway, that's not, the MDA properties are vested under the old code. So I don't have any concerns of any current applications.
So consistency is not really an issue because any of the neighborhoods that are already partially built would continue as is. Is that correct?
that's what I understood it as.
yeah, me too.
Well, unless it was a future phase of a subdivision that, you know, a next phase would be subject to, unless there was an MDA that vested them, a next phase of a subdivision would require them to comply with the new standard.
Yeah, that would only be because of the master development, all the land within there is subject to the old vested code, so. We could, you know, I think that in the past there was it shoreline, anyway,
Yeah.
if it's all safety.
Shoreline did kind of work with us to expand their roads for the recent phases to meet the code. That's kind of the one you see on the top left. But it was a bit of a negotiation, as I understand it, between engineering and them. Is that right, Polly? I think.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
So these standards are full of all sorts of details, boring to the vast majority of people. And so I don't know, you know, we've focused on this typical roadway section with the planning commission. I don't know what else to focus on, and so I invite questions and comments at this point.
So this is the major change. Are there any other changes?
Well, Thomas provided a comparison between the old and the new, and so you'd be able to see in that comparison any changes.
And relative to other standards, I don't know if you all had any time to look through them, but they deal with some stormwater runoff calculations. We've got some requirements for civil drawings, for plan submittals, road grade maximums, trying to look through it here. I don't think.
Yeah, there's lots of clarification about exactly right, Thomas. There's lots of specificity about what needs to be submitted, what constitutes a complete review, complete submittal, specificity about stormwater calculations and design, geometric design standards for streets. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we thought this might be a couple of the sections that were maybe most relevant to you because you all deal with these with regard to site plan and subdivision review. But as Gordon noted, a lot of the remaining portions of the manual are pretty technical.
So when you review when you review all the different documents that are required for this new, the new thing for the state.
The subdivision ordinance
sub-
The
changes.
the subdivision ordinance change.
Mhm.
Gordon, you're gonna kind of go through and make sure that they've done all the right calculations and that, you're basically using this as kind of your test for if they meet
No,
this test.
so the subdivision ordinance was more about process of approving subdivisions.
Right, I
But there
know.
was a component of it that you have to have all your checklist online, you have to have all your standards online. And this was a way to segregate out all the engineering standards so that we can just hand that over to a developer.
Mhm.
And a lot of towns do it that way,
Yeah, but
so.
then isn't Gordon then gonna use our manual to test whether or not they've met the requirements?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
I will compare what the information that they submit to me, I will compare them that against the standards and specifications.
Yeah.
These standard drawings and standard specifications,
Okay.
yes.
Right, and so you'll basically come to us with, well, they met X, Y, and Z, but on A, B, and C, they didn't calculate this correctly, or I disagree, or what have you. So we're gonna get a list from you of these are the engineering things that, are not quite up to snuff. And then.
No, if I had, and I realize there are some politics involved, but if I had my way, an application, a set of plans would not precipitate or rise to the planning commission unless they were fully compliant.
but it is a way for, as part of that checklist,
Yeah,
they have to meet all of these standards.
they have to pass Gordon.
Mhm. And if they disagree, they can, there's an appeal.
Yeah,
There's a way to appeal.
okay,
But no, we wouldn't be forwarding plans, subdivision improvement drawings to the planning commission that were not compliant with the town's engineering standards and specifications. We wouldn't saddle the planning commission with that burden of trying to decide whether to forward a recommendation based on plans that don't comply.
good to know, thank you.
Do any of the commissioners have any other questions about anything else in Gordon's report? Holly, are we going to? Do we need to make a motion to accept?
So first you
To
need to-
adopt the engineering standard specifications and drawings, and then another one to amend Title 10 to accept those.
Yes, and you also need to open a
Right,
public hearing, and I thought we had a resolution.
Hey, Thomas, I have one more question about the width of these streets. Do you think if we adopt the proposed standard, do you think that would have an impact on, the big one I'm thinking is Elkhorn Springs. Is it, I guess, 3 feet wider? Do you think that's gonna have an impact? Because I feel like we've gone down the road with the developer for quite a while, and then he's done drawings, and to spring this on him at this point, I think might be unfair if it's going to have a negative effect, and he has to redraw everything, which could impact, you know, his development, his potential development.
That's a good question. He has gone a bit further in his concept submittal, in as much as he has used his engineer to kind of lay it out almost as a subdivision. That is not what he has applied for. He is a concept considering rezoning. He would have to change his plan set based on the fact that he has submitted an engineering drawing. So he would have to amend his plan set. I mean,
See-
Polly, I don't know if there's a way to allow an exception if somebody's got concept plan submittal in. It's not really a vested application per se, but it is an application. I don't know.
And Thomas, do you think this could, I mean, affect his roads and the layout and the number of lots he's proposing?
Hmm.
Sounds like maybe possibly.
Well, and
That
also-
possibly, certainly, possibly. Yeah, it could. You're right. Yeah.
What about Wild Horse? Like, that's too much building on a
Not
little
enough land.
property as it is, if they have to widen the roads.
I think on Wild Horse, we only have private driveways though, and this is for public rights of way. So this would be a little bit different. The only thing we have there is the access road or the easement up to Bill Wolf's property, and then everything else would be a private driveway on private property.
So I would, I would want to address the premise of the question, and the premise is that we don't want to change. I mean, that's really what, in asking that question, you're really suggesting that you don't feel like a change is necessary, because on the flip side, we propose changes to correct problems, to make things better. And that's why we have laws about vesting, about when vesting occurs and when it doesn't. And if vesting has not occurred, then a municipality is in its full right to address issues sooner than later. And so if you don't want to change things, it's really not about how it'll affect somebody who hasn't submitted an application. It's about the idea that you don't want to change them.
Well, I disagree with you. For me, it's not about changing it. It's having a partner who wants to work with us, who's gone through a lot of steps and spent a lot of time and money, and now we're throwing this, oh, because you didn't do this before we changed this, then you've got to go redo everything again. And personally, if we know this is here, I just don't feel like that's being a good partner with one of our developers.
And also.
And so that's just, I would just suggest that.
First, please. And also going down that line, part of the reason he hasn't filed yet is because he's met with us and he's trying to address the changes that we wanted to see, that we've requested.
Well, let me just we shouldn't be talking about I understand the segue, but the fact is that they're both concept plans, right? Like they don't have, they're not ready they weren't ready for submittal at this point. I understand the intent behind it, whatever, and I think that Gordon's point is that if there's a problem, then you want, and you think that it's gonna make for better infrastructure in the town, then maybe that's something that you would recommend to the council. If you think it's not really a problem and not enough of a problem that you would want to change what, current applications or current thoughts of having applications, then don't recommend it. I mean, it's a full on, it's a policy question that I think the council is relying on your input to decide.
I just, my personal opinion is I don't think it's fair to somebody who's worked with us to amend his plan.
Well, can't we include in an MDA that he's allowed to have narrower streets if it affects
That's
it?
a question for Paul.
Well, I mean, so I don't suggest it. I don't like the idea. We're not supposed to be making exceptions, then the exception becomes the
The
rule.
rule.
So if you don't think that it's appropriate for his development, then maybe it's not appropriate elsewhere. Like just if, but
So-
at this point, we don't have if he had a full application, it'd be a totally different situation and he would be vested and it's not a question.
And, or this developer we're talking about, I mean, I really do, I like what he's doing and I appreciate all the work he's done. But he's a big boy. I mean, I think he's been through this before. And, on other developments elsewhere and, this can happen to anyone. And so it's business and it's safety. So I feel badly that he, may have to go redo some things, but that's part of the process. And I think it'll make the development a better place. I really do. And I don't think it'd make it more, not only accessible, I like the idea that it's safer, and also more aesthetically, I mean, I think it's aesthetically pleasing than to have a little wider road on a brand new development versus, trying to maneuver on a smaller road. I mean, that's my feeling. I mean, I think this is a different
In the
decision.
same token, Donna, a wider road does not guarantee that it's gonna be safer.
True, and a narrow road doesn't guarantee it's gonna be safer either.
No.
So it's a wash. So if we do a Ben Franklin, it's a wash. That argument then is a wash then, but it's safer for fire trucks and emergency personnel.
Not if the town enforced the code.
You're talking about the code for parking.
Does anyone have any other questions about the standards?
No, so then at
Well,
this,
it would actually solve the problem with parking up there for Nathan. You wouldn't have to put as many parking areas.
there being no more questions for Gordon and or Thomas in this regard, we'll open this up for public comment at this time. If anybody's online that has a public comment.
Nobody here.
And there being nobody online, we will then close the public comment portion of this issue. And now, Polly, I'll go back to what I asked before. Consider, we're gonna make a recommendation if we're accepting the standards.
The adoption.
I'll make a motion that we allow the standards to move from the town, what is it called, the town
Code.
code to this.
Well, so
New
I'd say
document,
first,
right?
your first motion should be whether or not you.
To accept,
To make a recommendation to adopt the resolution. I can't see that.
Adopt the
Sorry,
to
this
place
is
it in a manual.
Right. That should be the first one.
That should be the
Right,
first one.
Yeah, right, that's what I was trying to.
Yeah,
make the motion.
and then the second one will be the ordinance. So
Right,
And the ordinance is,
pulling everything from the town code.
so we can move to accept everything in here, but if we disagree with this, then we would vote not to approve.
No, you would just vote to make a you would, so
positive or negative
you
recommendation
would
to
do
the
a positive,
council.
you do you could do a positive recommendation to adopt the standards with the amendment of amending it so that the road standards are
XYZ.
as they are now,
And the curb.
and the curbs. That would be your first, if someone made that motion, that would be your first motion.
Oh, I thought it was to move it to the manual, I mean.
First.
move
That's
it
the
to a-
second. That would be the second part.
Well, so the roads,
Okay,
they're asking to change the
Okay.
road, so the new standards are mostly the same, but there are a few things that are making it more robust. Right, Gordon, it's not 100% from what was in the code before, there were one or two things that.
Correct.
Yeah, but they're engineering related and they're making them robust.
And is this something that needs to be done by the end of the year, or is this just?
No, but we really want to put them in place. We want to have those standards in place so that because the subdivision ordinance has been adopted. And so we want to just have a clear checklist. I mean. You don't have to do it tonight, but I don't know what you would gain by not
Right.
doing that tonight.
Yeah. we
I
can-
know what I would gain. Elkhorn Springs wouldn't have to redo everything, and that's for me, that's my issue. I wanna be a good partner, and I can't sit here and feel like I'm being a good partner when we have gone through this lengthy process with him. And because he hasn't signed an MDA, partially because of us delaying it, because we keep asking him for more and more and more, and change this, change that, change the other. Now he's being penalized, in my opinion, so I won't go for
I
it.
guess you could make and actually Kathleen suggested this, I guess if you are inclined to adopt the new standards as to roads, you could make that portion of it effective as of June 1st of this year,
25.
25. Whatever that year is. Because that way, if there's no vested application prior to June 1st, then the new those road the standards will be adopted, but the old road standards will be in effect until June 1st or whatever date.
well, that's a good compromise.
Or March 1st,
March 1st.
and then that gives the developer time to get his ducks in a row by March 1st.
You may want to do June 1st if that's really what you're thinking, because there are a few applications that would have to come in. He's in concept plan now. He's going to have to do rezoning, and then he will come in for subdivision. He might need just some additional time, if that's your goal.
And Paula, we could also make that amendment to this and say we do not accept the curb change also, correct?
Yes.
That's right.
Like the curbs we have now,
Okay,
I think we all agree on it.
we all agree on that.
Do you want me to summarize what I think I heard you say for your motion, so someone can say so moved?
So say if they're
Yeah,
right.
I'm gonna write it
I
down.
think that would be great.
Yeah,
So I think what I heard was that there was a motion to forward a positive recommendation to adopt a resolution that adopts the engineering manual with the following exceptions. It does not include the curb change amendment, and it implements the street width amendment on March 1st?
June 1st.
June 1st. Okay, we're back to June 1st, 2025.
so moved.
So I have something just to complicate everything, but can we choose to designate certain things just for like the Richardson Flats development?
I think that you want to have standards apply to everyone. You don't want to have two, we already have one separate standards that we fight over because it's vested. I wouldn't recommend it. Not to say legally, could you do it? I think so, but I wouldn't recommend it.
I'll second that motion.
If somebody's gonna make it first.
I'm gonna make the motion.
Glynis made it.
Holly
Glynis.
makes-
Okay, made the motion. So then I second, Joel seconds, and we'll take a vote. Donna?
So this is the June first thing that
Yes.
Holly just said,
With the existing curves.
with the existing curves,
And the wide,
As of June first.
as of the wide, as of June first.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes,
Glynis?
yes.
Tony's a no, because I don't think the roads should be widened. So then a positive recommendation of 4-1 to the town council in regard to that matter. Now somebody needs to make a motion to accept the changes into
Into the manual.
Title 10.
Yeah, so now your next motion will be to adopt an ordinance, make a positive recommendation to adopt an ordinance to remove the engineering standards from Title 10.
So moved.
So moved. Oh, yes, I'll second that.
Okay. We'll take a vote. Donna?
Yes,
For
Joel?
clarification,
Oh,
Glynis?
you're moving out of some titles 8, 9, and 10, just to be clear.
Oh, thank you, Thomas, yeah.
eight,
Yeah,
9, and
yes,
10,
8, 9, and 10, okay.
we can just say town code.
We'll just say town code.
Yeah.
town code.
So Donna?
Yes,
Joel?
Yes.
Rachel?
yes,
Glynis?
Yes,
And Tony's yes. Therefore, we'll make a positive recommendation to the town council to so move everything amending Title 10 relating to the engineering development and design standards. Okay, that being done, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Oh, no, wait, we have, Thomas, did you wanna just talk high level about general plan? It's not on for a work session, but just to introduce it.
Yeah, so what we are going to bring to you at next month's meeting is some recommendations for updating the general plan, really to kind of start to examine where we've come over 5 years. The general plan was done in 2019, and since 2019, the community has changed and grown significantly. Back in 2019, the general plan didn't have a very good future land use map. It did not indicate where we really wanted future commercial zoning to be. And as we continue to work through opportunities for neighborhood commercial centers and maybe town centers, et cetera, a town center, et cetera, we really think it's appropriate before moving forward with, future rezoning requests that we actually create a general plan that has those kinds of recommendations to it, or narrative included within it. And so we'll come back to you at the next meeting and really start to lay out for you our initial thinking, and then get your input. With all of that said, if you have specific concerns or recommendations for sections of the general plan that we should update, don't hesitate to send those my way. If you need easy access to the general plan, it's on our website. It's under key documents, so you can take a look at it there. If you haven't looked at it in a while, it is located there. But that is our goal, is to bring back the general plan and start to go through the process to update it.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thomas, what is that general plan under? Again, you said,
If you go to the town's website and you go to key documents, it's on the
Yeah.
right-hand side tab, it'll be there. And it takes a little while to load. It's a pretty heavy document. So if you click, give it a second, it may spin.
thank you.
Don't click on
There
it.
being,
It's shut down again.
there being no other issues in front of the commission, would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yes, you have to second.
oh, I second it.
Okay, then we'll go
You're
Donna?
looking- Yes.
Joel,
Yes.
Rachel,
yes.
Glynis,
Yes.
and Tony's yes. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. Thanks, Thomas.
Or in